Welcome to chapter 20. We're getting down there. Only 7 more chapters after. Well, 6 more chapters after this one. Chapter 20. Women came out of the trees. A girl was among them. She had changed. She was not so slender as I remembered her, and she walked slowly with a limp. Could it be my cousin, Running Deer? Not until we were close in each other's arms was I certain. I thought you were dead. Many times I prayed for your spirit, I said to her. But here you are, alive. And here you are among our people. How did you ever come this long way? How long did it take you? Were you hurt? Running Deer did not answer right away because I was squeezing the breath out of her. Not until Captain Clark came and took me by the arm did I let her go. He took me across the meadow and through the trees to a lodge beside the river, a lean-to made of cottonwood saplings and hides. Inside it was dark, though a small fire was burning. It smelled of war paint and buffalo grease and warrior sweat. I bet that was not a good smell. We sat down and took off our moccasins as proof of friendship. A Shoshone chieftain was standing in the deep shadows at the back of the lodge. We have a feeble fire, he said to one of the warriors. Encourage it with a piece of your fat pine. It is not my wish to talk to people I cannot see. His voice filled the lodge. It was shrill yet strong. I had heard it before, some time long ago. It reminded me of another voice, my father's voice. But it was not my father's. The chieftain had fierce eyes and was tall and thin and wore a headband of eagle feathers. On his forehead was a yellow dot circled in red, which spoke of friendship and peace. His cheeks were painted with yellow sunbursts, which meant that a new day had dawned. In the dim light, he looked like my father. Could this be? The warrior placed a pine bough dripping with resin on the fire. The chieftain stepped forward out of the shadows into the light. He looked taller in the light, much taller than my father. He cleared his throat to speak, but before he uttered a word, I saw at the corner of his mouth the scar I had given him. The time we were playing in the river. It was my brother, Kamehameha, he who never walks. Mika was in my arms, but I hugged my brother anyway. Charbonneau shouted at me, so I gave him the baby, and my brother and I hugged each other again. I would have hugged him a third time, except that he suddenly remembered that he was a Shoshone chief and a man. Chieftains and men do not hug women when other people are looking, and seldom at any other time. I tried to speak, but tears choked me. The tears would not stop. My brother turned away and faced the white men and said a few words of welcome. He held a pipe hung with feathers, which was very tall and had a bowl made of a bright green stone. He lit it with a hot coal and pointed the stem of the pipe toward the east, where the sun was, then to the sacred points of the world. My brother held the pipe out to Captain Lewis, but before the captain could take it, he drew it back and repeated the ceremony 3 times. He pointed the stem at the heavens, at the magic circle. He drew on the pipe 3 times, puffed 3 times, then held it out for Captain Lewis, Captain Clark, and the other white men. At last, he gave it to his warriors. Captain Lewis stood up and told him why he had come. He said that he was on his way to a place called the sea, the great waters that were too salty to drink, and that he needed many horses to reach this far place. I know this place. We have shells from this place, my brother said. He frowned. The Blackfeet came this year. They came in the spring and killed 9 of our people and took women away and many horses. But we have many horses left, and you can have what you wish of them. Afterward, when they no longer needed me for the language, I went to look for Running Deer. As soon as I stepped outside, a hand touched my shoulder. I turned to find Man Who Smiles staring down at me, smiling his crooked little smile. He smiled crookedly all the time because a Blackfoot arrow had struck him when he was a boy and twisted his mouth. She has the black eyes of our people and the skin of the white people, he said. He said this softly to Miko as he leaned over and gave him a pat on the head. Miko smiled because the man was smiling. This child is very pretty, he said. He gave Miko a nip under the chin. Miko gurgled and kicked. Captain Clark had spoiled him. The rest of the men had spoiled him too. And Scannon had spoiled him, the dog. I am going to steal this pretty little girl, Man Who Smiles said. This baby is not pretty, I said. It is a handsome baby, not pretty. And he is a boy and not a girl. Ahai! A boy, of course, and how handsome he is. Someday he will break many hearts. Oh, yes. The man touched both of Miko's clenched fists. Someday these hands will wield a mighty bow. They will send true arrows, kill many buffalo, slay the great white bear. What is your name, little one? Miko did not answer, and I looked at Man Who Smiles and did not answer. I was trembling too much. Once, long ago, in another far place it seemed, Man Who Smiles was young, 3 times my age, but young. He went to talk to my father, and my father said yes, he could marry me, though he had 2 wives already. It was a promise my father had made to him and solemnly sealed. When 12 moons had risen and set, the marriage could take place. Man Who Smiles gave back my gaze. His hair, which was now gray, was braided in a loop with porcupine quills and hung over one shoulder. He kept fingering the quill. He was nervous. What is the name of this one? He asked. Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau, I said. Charbonneau is the one with the hair on his face and the eyes way back in his head that you can barely see? This Charbonneau is the boy's father? Women were gathering, standing off, but close enough to hear. Among them, I saw 3 eager squaws who might be his wives. Now, you guys have learned that using the word squaw is a derogatory term towards women, but that's what's written in the book. So I'm just reminding you that we don't use that word, okay? But it is written in the book here. You, Sacagawea, are the mother, he said, smiling the smile that never faded. You are the child's mother, yet by the law of our people, by the sacred law of the Shoshone, by your father's solemn promise freely given, you belong to me. And the child belongs to me also. This is the law. So boys and girls, and if you're not sure about what happened, he was promised to marry Sacagawea when she was just little. Her father had promised her to this man to be his wife when she got old enough. But she got captured, and now she's back. And he's saying, hey, your dad promised you to me, so that means you're mine. And that means your child is mine too. Does that seem fair? I mean, nothing was very fair for Sacagawea. She didn't really get to make any choices in her life, did she? But the rules were different back then. Thank goodness they've changed. He had strong fingers. Before I could even move, he snatched Miko away from me. He grasped my hand. Come, he said, we will see Chief Kamehameha. We will talk. He will listen to me and give his consent. My brother and the 2 captains were still in the lodge, passing another peace pipe around. Charbonneau had left them. While we talked, he lounged in the doorway, listening to the Shoshone words, trying to understand what we were saying. But when he saw Miko snatched from my arms, he ran toward us. You, Indian, what happens? He shouted. What you do with baby? Man Who Smiles did not answer. He turned his back and strode into the lodge. Charbonneau followed him. I could hear the baby crying. The women came closer. The wives of Man Who Smiles plucked at my sleeve and whispered advice. The prettiest one said, he is not a good husband. You will not like this one. He sleeps much, another one said. He does not hunt. When he is not sleeping, all he does is eat. He eats much, the third wife said. They edged up and fingered my blue bead belt and said they would like to have it. Would I trade it for some white antelope hides that would make a fine jacket? Behind them, Running Deer was watching. She was ready to help me if I needed her. I ran into the lodge. Chief Cameahwait was asking Charbonneau for silence. Sacagawea, he said, is married to this one. She was married by the laws of the Minatarees. He pointed at Charbonneau. Before that, long before, she was promised by her father, by my father, to Man Who Smiles, a solemn promise, promised in true faith. I heard it promised by my father, who is now dead. The baby had begun to cry, so Man Who Smiles passed him to me. I turned Miko right side up and gave him a breast to feed on. I was ready to tell both of the men and my brother and all of the women who were now crowded into the doorway that Miko was mine. I would tell them that I would not give him up, no matter what was said or who said it. Man Who Smiles stood holding a lance with a foxtail tied to it. Charbonneau had a hand on the hilt of his long-bladed knife. They did not look at each other, as if the other one was not there, but suddenly they were angry foes. What is a foe? A foe is an enemy. F-O-E, foe. Someone warned Captain Clark of trouble. He came and stood between the two men. He looked sharply at me and said, "The choice is yours, Janie." Remember, he calls her Janie. "Which man do you choose?" My heart beat in my throat. Then I could not hear it beat at all. "You need to choose," Captain Clark said. "We don't have days to make up our minds." "It is you that I choose. It is you that I love," were the words that I longed to say to him. But I said slowly under my breath, "Toussaint Charbonneau." Poor Sacagawea. She doesn't like either man, and she knows both of them are bad husbands. Toussaint beats her, and this other guy is lazy, and his other wives told her that he's a bad husband. She doesn't want to be married to any of them. She actually is in love with Captain Clark. The words fell like stones. Captain Clark knew they were stones. He knew how I felt about them. Running Deer was waiting outside the lodge. She had not heard what I said to Captain Clark, yet she knew what I wanted to say. She had seen me walk into the camp that morning at his side. She had seen us go into the lodge together. She had watched when I had to choose between the two men. Running Deer knew all this, but she said only, "You will kill yourself and your baby if you go on to the big lake. It is many, many sleeps away. None of our men have gone, but they have heard. They say that the mountains are high and the canyons deep and the rivers so fast that even the fish can't swim in them." So she's saying, don't go to the big lake. Stay here. The big lake is the ocean. That's what they're calling the big lake, because they've never seen the ocean. They don't know what it is. So they think of it as a big lake. Miko began to whimper. Running Deer took him from me. "What happened to his cradle board?" she asked. "It got lost in a storm." "My baby died at the end of winter. It was a hard winter. We all went down the mountain near the Great Falls, but still there was nothing to eat. That was when I lost my baby. I have her cradle board if you would like it." Oh, that's really kind of her. She took me to her small teepee of willow brush and hides, where she lived with her husband and his two other wives. He was asleep, so she was quiet with the cradle board and did not give it to me until we were outside again. It was new and made of white birch. Miko liked the blue jay feathers that hung down from its top. The sun was hot. We went and sat under a tree and did not talk for a long time. Then Running Deer said, "You are going to the big lake because you love Captain Clark. You love the red hair and the blue eyes and the way he treats you, also because he is a white man." Her husband had come awake. He stood at the door of the teepee holding his stomach. "I have 3 wives," he shouted, "but where are the wives? Where is the food? I guess I find myself 2 more wives, maybe 3. Running Deer did not move or answer. "For this I will get a big beating," she said. "Does your husband beat you?" "Sometimes." "Big or small?" "Both." "What does he beat you with?" His fist usually, sometimes with a stick." "Have you gotten used to it?" Never. I do a little. If you married Captain Clark, would he beat you? No. Why not? He would never have to beat me. Shoo, shoo, Running Deer said, which means good, but she said it as though she didn't believe me. Charbonneau came and stood over us. He glanced at the sun. Time for eat, he said. No food here anywhere. Shoshone eat sometime, maybe? Sometime, I said. Tomorrow, maybe, Running Deer said. And that's the end of chapter 20. Let's find out what happens in chapter 21.